Welcome to the Mapdec workshop. Today I want to run through three things which I think make you stand out as a pro mechanic. Now, warning, this is a hell of a deep dive designed for people who want to be more professional in their work or are aspiring to become more professional mechanics. I'm going to timestamp those three things below so you can skip ahead to what's relevant to you at the time. But these three things are going to be tooling, lubricants and cleanliness. So let's get stuck straight in with tooling. I think every mechanic's favourite subject. Mechanics love tools. Now, you might think every mechanic wants to have the best, most beautiful, most expensive tools. That isn't always the case. You see, there are certain tools that, yes, we use once in a blue moon that we want to be really, really nice. So something like the Abbey bike tools, rear derailleur hanger, alignment gauge. Fantastic piece of kit, but if you use this too much, it will wear out and it is expensive. So we also keep, cheaper alternatives around when we've got to do some more sort of brutal work or when the precision isn't as important on certain types of bikes, so that we're not always wearing out our absolute best tools, but we know we've got them there and they're going to be sharp and fine when we need them to be. Now, when it comes to things like hexes, for me, it's really important that one, you know that they're going to be sharp and precise when you want them to. They're not going to round out or slip out of a bolt, but at the same time, they need to be modular so that you can replace them easily. And that is the real key of a pro bike workshop, is you've got to be ready to just throw things in the bin and replace them, because things wear out. Remember, we're using these 6, 7, 8 hours a day and they wear out fast, and a worn out premium hex key is absolutely no use to you whatsoever. But also, if you get the cheapest of the cheap, they might have never been precise in the first place. Now, I quite like using Wera tools. There's other brands out there, but for me, these are actually my favorite. We keep it really simple. The standard Wera hex key. Now, Wera are a little bit weird because their actual hex has got like little concaves in them. So the idea is they really bite into the bolt, but as a consequence, the edges can round off fairly easily as well. So luckily, they're of a reasonable price, I would say, that I don't mind putting them in the bin. So this is one that I'm literally going to put in the bin straight after this video, never to be seen again. The 5 and the 4 mil are probably the ones we use most often, and I can compare them up on the screen here with two virtually new, they're maybe like a couple of weeks old now, and just see the difference. Now, we have lots of different types of metals depending on corrosion resistance. I don't worry too much about that in my workshop, but just sort of what's available at the time. But you can see the difference in just how quickly those edges just round off. So for me, really important that they are at a cost where I can just put them in the bin, get fresh ones, and know that I'm not going to do any damage with, rounded off tools. That is the worst thing. Now, I don't really like using the T-handled wrenches. A couple of reasons for that. One is that one of the edges has got a ball end. The ball end is actually really important because you can easily rotate bolts out from all sorts of angles, but you can't apply any sort of force on those at all. They are for when your bolts are running smooth. The other end, which is sharper, you can apply some effort to it. And for me, the T-handled wrenches just apply too much force. And too many things in cycling now are super fragile. Cycling is really weird because everything has got to be super lightweight and weirdly corrosion resistant as well. A hell of a combination. But aluminium bolts, titanium bolts, you really do need precise tools, especially when they're only like 4-3 mil thick as well. So get good tools, but not so good that you're not afraid to just throw them away and bin them. Now, the same goes for things like my circlip tools. Circlip tools, now you might not think about this, but they do round off over time. And when they do, you'll find it really hard to try and get that annoying circlip that's stuck down the bottom of a free hub sometime. And it's because all your edges have gone on your circlip pliers. So again, I like to use Nipex. Again, at a quality level that I don't mind replacing when they go. I mean, for us as mechanics, the amount of time that I can spend trying to dig out a circlip compared to just replacing this tool and get the job done in 10 seconds is massive. So again, tools that, when they're worn out, bin them, get fresh ones. Now, some of the stuff that we use in cycling can be so fine as well, that these little tips just break. So if you get the real cheap ones, they just break and then you just haven't got any circlip pliers. So they need to be strong enough, but also at the point where, again, you don't mind replacing them. So Knipex for me is the brand to go for. Same thing with pliers and cutters as well. Big fan of that. And then it's not just those. We also think about cone spanners. So cone spanners is something that we don't use as much anymore, but they do wear out quickly. Now, once upon a time, we used to only really use these on steel nuts, whereas now we can be using these on some very soft aluminium stuff as well. So it's really important that these are precise. Now, here's an old one. Again, I'm going to put on screen just to see how that is worn out compared to one that is relatively new. Park Tool are okay. They're not the most precise out there, and they can be a little bit skinny. I quite like using Junior as well, a little bit thicker, sometimes too thick, so we end up keeping lots of different types of these around in loads of different sizes. Don't spend too much money on these because they only really get better in terms of the handles, and that doesn't really matter. You're only going to use them for a few seconds. What's really important is this is precise, and once they're not precise, again, don't be scared, put them in the bin, get fresh ones. Again, the same thing with cutting tools as well. This is the tool that we use for cutting brake hoses, and now a lot of the brake hose cutters on the market for sort of consumer level use a scalpel blade. Now those scalpel blades, yes, they're easy and quick to replace, but here in the workshop, those scalpel blades probably last 4 cuts, like 1 use, and we were putting a new scalpel blade into them. So this sort of thing probably lasts us about a month, maybe 2 months, and it's dead easy to use as well. We can just, you know, get the job done, and we know it's sharp, it's reliable. And then finally, torque wrenches. Now, there's loads of chat about whether you should get your torque wrenches calibrated. The thing is, in cycling, we use quite a strange variety of torque wrenches. So we end up having 2 types. We end up having one that's very small and fine, and then one that goes up to fairly big numbers, 50, 80 Newton meters. Now, really what I prefer to do is have multiple torque wrenches around. If one feels like it's not right, because we're always constantly using something, then we just check it against another. If it's wrong, it's normally, I hate to say it, but it's normally cheaper and more cost effective to just replace it than it is to go and get one calibrated. Now, you can calibrate them yourselves to an extent, but in reality, like the smaller ones are generally cheap enough that we would just replace them. The bigger ones, probably a different thing, we might send them off, but they go out of calibration less frequently. It's the smaller ones you've got to worry about. I haven't really ever found one that I really like, to be fair. Currently using the Effetto Mariposa ones. They're okay. I haven't really ever found one that goes, yes. The important thing is that they cover from about 0 up to about 12, 13 Newton meters. So that covers most things on a bike. Then we have a bigger torque wrench for doing like the bigger bolts, things like disc rotors, cassette lock rings and crank bolts, that sort of thing. But for most things on a bike, you know, 0 to 12 is about perfect. Now, one thing that used to be really impressive in bike shops, used to walk into a bike shop, there'd be a whole wall of like Park Tool or Junior stuff, and it looks really impressive, like the whole shop is sponsored by them. For me, that's not what you're looking for, because no one tool brand makes a range of fantastic tool. Park makes some fantastic stuff. In fact, they're probably the only company that makes, you know, really good reaming tools. You know, things like this, Park are the only ones that make them. Whereas things like this from Cyclos, for instance, they are probably making the best T47 and BSA reaming and facing tools. Way better than what Park are doing. So really, the sign of a really pro mechanic is having a whole mismatch of different tools, because you know that mechanic has absolutely analysed and chosen the best tool for that job, and they put their heart and soul into that selection. I know I certainly do, and I try lots of different things, and when I find something I like, we just go for it. But I'm always open-minded to trying new things, but generally speaking, if something doesn't work for me, I just don't have it in the workshop, no matter what brand it is. Okay, let's clear this away. It's time to talk lubricants. Here's the other thing that a pro mechanic always does. It always puts their tools away. This drawer's getting a bit more built out. We're putting some more stuff in here. It's a new bit of foam board in there. Oh, one more thing. Magnetic parts trays, like just get lots of them, loads of different types. This was really, really big ones, small ones, divided ones, just so useful. Deep breath, everyone, gather your thoughts. We're going to go fairly deep into lubricants now. I'm a little bit geeky about this, I'm afraid. So if this gets too much for you, just skip ahead to the cleanliness section. But let's try and get into grease. Now, mechanics, oh man, we've all got our own secret sauce and there is no real 100% right answer. The stuff that I have chosen here is because of the bikes that we work on and the environment that we live in and the brands that we work on the most. As always, you've got to read the manufacturer's instructions, but really what this is about is knowing when to apply the right grease. So in reality, the sign that you're a real pro mechanic is if someone says, why are you using that grease? You know the answer. So here is what I use. I'm not saying it's necessarily 100% right, but it's right for what we do. Now, our go-to grease is this. This is Mobil XHP 222. I'm not a massive fan of using greases from the bike industry because they don't tell you what's in it. They just give you loads of marketing spiel. And what I want to do is go and find the data sheet and I want to know what's in it. So this is a waterproof lithium complex grease. It's the same grease that they use in Hope free hub bearings. It's also the same grease that they fill a lot of enduro bearings with. So we know it's well used in the bike industry, but we can go to data sheets, we can look it up, we can buy it in bulk. This is NLGI2. It's a really tacky grease as well. So it is still fine enough that we can put it into a grease syringe like this and we can peel back the end of a bearing seal and we can inject it in between those balls. It also means that we can flow through a brush and we can apply it more liberally in certain situations. And it's fairly cost effective as well. You can buy, you know, a big pack of 6 of these and put it into a grease gun to refill all our syringes. Relatively easy. For me, why we use it in the Lake District is about anti-corrosion. It's tacky, it stays in place. You can wash your bike, you can hose it down. This stuff stays put, and that's kind of why I like it. Its tackiness does mean that potentially bearings don't function as well because it's slightly thicker, more viscous grease. Now, you will see in this application, like bearings, rotating surfaces, which is where we'll use it. Other shops might use that bright green, sort of almost fluorescent grease. I think Motorex do it, Shimano does it. It comes under lots of different labels. Now, it is a thinner, less viscous grease that you would use in like a cup and cone bearing situation. But we really don't use it here because it just washes out way too easily. It does have a potential downside. Now, lithium greases, especially that white sticky lithium grease, lithium greases can be quite bad when it's next to plastic components. So let's say you are putting this grease onto your headset bearing. Great. The reason that you might want to do this is because this is just anti-corrosion. It gives you a sticky grease that just stops the outside corroding and it won't contaminate with the inside because you know it's the same grease inside as to outside. And that is really important. I'll come on to that in a second. But then you're going to interface this with a plastic component like this. So we've got a plastic component here and you're going to put your plastic headset cap on. And if you've got a grease that really makes plastic parts swell or go brittle, it's not great. Now, this can do that, but it's not as bad as other lithium greases. So we like to use it more because it is waterproof and that kind of offsets any potential downsides of, rotting the plastic, what we found is that you're more likely to have a rusty bearing and for your plastic to go off. Now, some lithium greases, especially that white stuff, can rot plastic really quite quickly. So that is why we use Mobil XHP 222 as our bearing grease. Generally speaking, things that are going to rotate. So we might use that one to peel off the seal behind one of this and inject it into the balls. We will probably use it to coat the outside of this and before you put it into the frame. We would probably use it on axle parts as well. So when we're interfacing this part of the axle with the inside here, just make sure that this has got a tiny slither of grease on it. It's those sort of applications that we would use it. So anything that is designed to move, we would normally use the blue grease. Couple of things with this: if anyone's got like ceramic bearings or real specialist stuff, there is a whole load of really specialist greases. So we keep all of these in stock. So Kluber you'll find on certain Campagnolo and sort of ceramic stuff. This is Darude free hub grease that you'll find on a lot of precision hubs as well. Now that's great, but what about parts that we want to lubricate through assembly or want to sort of give some sort of corrosion resistance but don't necessarily have to turn and rotate? Well, for that we use a construction grease. We always use a calcium sulfonate grease. So this is the current one we're using. This is by Morgan Blue. You might have seen us on the channel use the Maxima one as well. This is like a red grease. Now this weirdly has been discontinued or not in the UK. It used to be one of my favorite greases, so we've been sort of using the Morgan Blue one recently and it seems to be a good alternative. The reason we're using a calcium sulfonate grease for this, this is all about anti-corrosion, anti-galling. So when you are constructing threads or you're inserting something that you want to push in and then stay put, you don't want it to rotate, this is when you might use it. So you might use it on a press fit assembly into a bottom bracket if you're not using a retaining compound, or you'll most certainly use it on the threads of a threaded bottom bracket. You'll use it on like stem bolts, that sort of thing, if you're not using a Loctite. Things like seat clamp bolts, that sort of stuff. Now you do need to remember that if you're greasing those bolts for an anti-corrosion, anti-galling purpose, i.e. you swapped out a steel bolt for a titanium bolt, you don't want those threads to gall up. You need to remember that you've lubricated your threads and you need to adjust your torque settings down so that you're not over torquing those bolts. There's guidelines online where you can work out how much to reduce your torque setting by if you choose to grease your threads. Now, one of the reasons I like using this mixture, because greases shouldn't really be in close proximity to one another. I know you've seen some other YouTube channels out there who might use lots of different greases all in sort of close proximity to one another. Thing is, greases flow and they mix and they really shouldn't. So sometimes you might think, well, actually the best grease to use is this, but then it's really, really close to the right grease for this one, in which case you've got to make a decision. Don't just try and mix them, because mixing them is the worst thing that you can do. Now, I've just done a little bit of this on off camera. So this is our normal tacky XHP 222. It's tacky, it's sticky, it's designed to stay put. I've mixed that with some of the calcium grease and you can see how it's gone soapy and it's gone a slightly runnier. Over time that gets worse and worse. Now the other thing to be concerned about with this is how it mixes with solvents. So in our case, in the bike industry, this one here I've mixed with GT85 and you can see how it's kind of starting to dissolve it. And this one here I've mixed with, I think it's AC90. It's not as bad, but it still breaks down the grease over time. So you've got to be aware of what customers might be doing to their bearings, like outside of this. And the green grease really does dissolve quite quickly, like GT85. So that's what we use, a calcium sulfonate for threads and things that we want to insert and then stay put. And then anything that is going to be rotating or has got the potential to get washed out, we'll use a sticky XHP 222. And anything that we will need a really low friction grease, either the manufacturer's instructions. Now, I know you're about to have loads of questions because loads of other YouTubers out there will have lots of different opinions on this. And so let's just cover that off. Copper grease. Now, we have it in the workshop. This has probably been here for years and years and years because I try and hide it at the back of the cupboard and use it as infrequently as possible. There's a couple of situations where we might have to use it, mostly on titanium frames with steel or aluminium parts being sort of screwed into them, but even then I try not to use it. The reason is, one, it's quite toxic, it's pretty harmful to the environment, it's pretty toxic to mechanics to have it on their hands. Also, it is very thin, it doesn't have a very thick base to it either, so it washes out really quickly. You'll know this if you use it because it will just go everywhere. It doesn't really have any sort of great viscosity to it, so it washes out really easily. Now, the other thing is, you've probably seen other YouTube channels use this in abundance, where they're mating two surfaces together. So they might have like an aluminium chain rings and they're going to bolt that to the aluminium spider and they'll put copper grease in here and they'll bolt it all together as if they're being really fancy. Honestly, it's the worst thing that you can do. The two reasons that I've seen them doing for it is, say, prevent a corrosion and also prevent creaking. Well, both of those two things, that will not work. One, creaking will come from a point where something is sticking and then sticks and slips, and that's where you hear that noise. So if you're putting a lubricant in there, you might reduce it, but you're going to have to increase your bolt torque to stop things slipping. Really, the idea is to get in there and fix it properly and get the actual interface working. The other thing is, if you're mating two identical metals, it's better off having no other metal in there. So if you look at the nobility of materials, it's all about the flow of electrons. And so if you're putting aluminium next to aluminium, great, the flow of electrons is the same. The second that you put copper in there or nickel or whatever, you've introduced another metal and you end up with the battery effect, i.e. the electrons can flow and you end up with galvanic corrosion. So metal to metal surfaces, again, follow the manufacturer's instructions. It's all in there. You do not need to add grease, especially not copper grease, to these surfaces. Now, I know that that's going to upset an awful lot of people in the comments from people who watch other YouTube channels, but please go and check my data. Now, if you really, really, really have to, you can get an aluminium anti-seize, but like, why? Just calcium sulfonate grease, it works. Oh yeah, I got this disc rotor out because the amount of times that I have seen mechanics on YouTube put grease onto the center lock rotors. I haven't seen a set of manufacturer's instructions that tell you to put grease on that ever. And there's a good reason, because this gets hot, it also gets wet. And if you're going to increase galvanic corrosion, that's one way of speeding up galvanic corrosion. Now, the last piece of this is, okay, well, what sort of sprays do we use in the workshop? You've seen these floating in the background. You've seen every single bike shop in the world use GT85. We use GT85, but we know when to use it. This is when we need to, it's a water dispersant, i.e. we've cleaned a part and it's wet, and we just want to make sure it's not going to go rusty. So this is a great way of getting that part done. So we might sort of clean cassettes in the parts washer, we might wash them down and give it a quick spray of this, and that's about the only time we will use it. This is a solvent, it will break down grease, also destroy sort of seals, so not great. A slightly better alternative is AC90. This is also got some rust inhibitors on there as well, so if you're using steel parts, for instance, this is quite good. It is not as aggressive against sort of plastic seals, but if you sort of want the ultimate in workshop, there's Joker 440 from Motorex. This is really, really kind to the plastic seals and plastic parts. So if you're trying to spray around your headset area, you've got plastic bottom brackets, plastic parts next to sort of bearings and grease, this probably does the least damage, one to your lithium grease and two to your plastic parts. As a mechanic, this is kind of my go-to. It's somewhere in between GT85 and ACF50. Okay, to sum up that chapter, the thing you really want to know is, why have you chosen a certain grease? Have you got the data sheet? Do you know what sort of effect it's going to have on the components that you're putting it with? And try and stay in your lane. Greases really don't like mixing, so know why you're choosing one grease to go in one area of the bike and why you're choosing another grease to go into another area of the bike. Look at the type of bearings that you use, see what type of grease goes into them, make sure you're not going to be mixing and matching. There's nothing worse than matching greases. They really, really do not like to be mixed and matched. They just don't play well with one another. And then what advice do you give to customers as well? So once you've used a certain type of grease, what product do you sell to your customers to make sure that the grease that you've installed is actually going to stay put and stay in good condition? Ultimately, that's what you need to know as well. Okay, are we ready? Final chapter, cleanliness. Now, it goes without saying that having a tidy workbench is really essential. When you're working on stuff, put things away, throw your cardboard boxes away. Once you're finished with tools, put them away, because the worst thing you can do is put a tool down, or a tool falls off the wall and it drops onto your expensive component, or you've just been using the tool and like you've put it down and you've walked away and you're like, where did it go? Like, clean everything down and just keep your work area nice and tidy. Second thing is keep you clean and tidy, because you know your hands are really, really important. You don't want to get like dry skin and get, you know, cracked and like your fingers get sore. A lot of these sort of greases and stuff are also not that good for your health. So setting up in a pro workshop, we tend to use got a barrier cream here, so we can put that onto your hands first of all before you start your day. We've also got a really aggressive hand wash here as well, and sinks that you can very easily turn on and just, you know, with the greasy hands. And then there is a restorative cream as well. So at the end of the day, you wash your hands, you put the cream on and try and restore your hands. Nitrile gloves in a whole range of sizes as well. Again, just have them there. If they're accessible, you use them. If they're on the other side of the workshop, you just won't use them. And then other things that we use are, we use Wonder Wipes quite a lot. These are not particularly environmentally friendly, but sometimes they are about the best things for getting really stubborn things off, especially like tar that you might have picked up from the road and you have to try and get those bits off, cleaning bits of rust off. Sometimes these are the only things that work. And if you have got really, really dirty, sticky hands, this will work well first. Get your hands wiped off and then come back and use the soap. Having blue roll, or in our case, white roll in abundance pretty much everywhere. And then of course, our parts washer. This is fantastic. It's like an eco bioremediation wash. We basically wash things in here, go straight onto here, we rinse it all off so there's none of that chemicals left on the part. And then we use a GT85 or an AC90 just to make sure it's not going to go rusty while it's sat there. Of course, having an eye wash, and there's a hose that we use. So if we've got big components in the parts washer, we'll take them outside and give them a hose down afterwards. If you're wondering what his other things are, we've got a big grease gun full of Mobil XHP 222, a couple of crock pots full of wax, and a sonic cleaner as well. So it's something that I'm really, really super hot on, is just generally keeping the workshop and your hands in clean and good condition. Now, one last thing, we also use a lot of cloths. So we like to use microfiber cloths like this. What we'll tend to do is, if we're doing a suspension service, a completely fresh microfiber cloth every single time. We don't want to make sure there's any dirt or grit on any of those. And if we're polishing down your bike at the end of a service, get a fresh cloth out, polish it down, and then that cloth then goes into a slightly dirtier cloth and a slightly dirtier cloth, and it gets to the point where they just get thrown away. Now, for me, I know this isn't the most environmentally friendly choice out there, but some of the bikes that we're working on now and the paintwork on them, etc., is so fragile. I am not going to take the risk with anything else. This is just an expense that we suck up. You can get these fairly cheap now. If you look on like AliExpress or Amazon, you'll find massive bulk packs of microfiber. You can even get it on the reel sometimes. I tend to just shop around and, you know, pick up the bargains when I see them. But microfiber cloths, absolutely fantastic. You just know that you can pick it up, use it, you're not going to do any damage to the component. It's pretty absorbent, and then throw it away, sadly, and get a fresh one out when you need to. Keep it clean. Right, I hope you found that video not too much of a mind melt and somewhat useful as well. Again, please get down in the comments. What do you use in your workshops? What is your main takeaway from this video? Do you think there's something in here in our workshop that we could improve? I would love to know. Part of being a real pro mechanic is speaking to other pro mechanics and getting their feedback and like what works well from them. Our entire journey of grease has always come from, you know, other mechanics suggesting things and us trying it, and tools that, you know, we don't just listen to our sales rep, we listen to other pro mechanics and we try the tools that other people have recommended. And so hopefully we're spreading that wisdom to you guys. With all that said, I hope you found this interesting. If you want more videos like this, more technical deep dives, please subscribe to the channel. Take a look through our back catalogue. I'm going to put a video up at the end of this video, or one I'm pretty certain if you enjoyed this one, you'll enjoy just as much. All right, see you on the next one. Cheers.